Hi, everyone. I'm DIANE MACEDO. Thanks for streaming with us. The French government says the head of ISIS in Sahara has been neutralized in an operation. He was wanted in the death of 4 U.S. troops who were murdered in an ISIS ambush in Niger in 2017. He'd also claimed responsibility, in addition to that attack, for the brutal murder of French aid workers in 2020. The remnants of Hurricane Nichols are slowly moving through the south, drenching Mississippi and Alabama with heavy rain. Flash flood watches are in effect for 4 states. Some areas of Mississippi to Florida could see another 6 inches of rain. Meanwhile, 2 more tropical threats are developing in the Atlantic. One system is forecast to move north along the east coast over the next few days, and another could move close to the Caribbean by the end of the weekend. And Jeopardy champion Matt Amodio is entering the record books, notching his 21st consecutive victory last night. That puts him in 3rd place for all-time winnings, behind Jeopardy legends Ken Jennings and James Holzhauer. Matt made his debut back in July when our own Robin Roberts was guest hosting. He's known for winning big with daily doubles, and so far his total winnings are over $740,000. The FDA could decide on booster shots for the general public as soon as tomorrow. Pfizer says the vaccine's efficacy diminishes after several months, but some FDA scientists argue the current 2-dose regimen still offers strong protection. Meanwhile, COVID hospitalizations are hitting record highs in 9 states. ABC's Whit Johnson has the latest.
The looming question of whether vaccinated Americans are ready for booster shots could be answered as early as tomorrow, when an FDA panel is expected to vote on a recommendation. Pfizer is making the case that a 3rd shot is needed for those 16 and older, about 6 months after receiving their 2nd dose.
What we've seen is increases in cases and breakthrough cases as time goes on, just because of a waning immunity. And this is why this booster question is coming into play right now.
Pfizer also suggesting the reduction in vaccine protection is likely not due to the Delta variant, but instead vaccine effectiveness decreases with increasing time since being fully vaccinated. Pfizer saying vaccine efficacy against symptomatic disease was 96% a week after the 2nd dose, but then dropped to nearly 84% after 4 months. But some at the FDA have responded with skepticism, arguing in its report accompanying Pfizer's data that the vaccines at their currently approved doses still afford protection against severe COVID-19 disease and death in the United States. Moderna citing new data saying people who received its vaccine should get a 3rd dose as well.
It's not the kind of thing that you want to miss by 6 months. You'd rather be a little too early than a little too late, because ultimately lives are at stake.
Moderna following Pfizer's 6-month timeline, but says its booster will only be a half dose, arguing that provides more than enough protection. The conversation over booster shots heating up as COVID-19 cases and deaths continue to climb. Hospitalizations in 9 states hitting new record highs, including Washington, where doctors have been treating overflow patients from neighboring states, now with a dire warning that space is running out.
If we get to the point where we can no longer accept patients, you're going to have patients that die as a result of lack of available care.
Now, the Biden administration's timeline for booster shots on September 20th might be delayed because another step in this process goes through a CDC panel, and they're not meeting until next Wednesday. So boosters likely won't be available until late next week at the earliest. But the White House says they're ready to roll out those shots to 80,000 locations across the country if approved. Diane?
All right, Whit Johnson, thanks. And the FBI is facing serious criticism after 4 of the country's top gymnasts testified before Congress about alleged failures investigating the sex abuse cases against Dr. Larry Nassar. The athletes are accusing the agents of first ignoring and then in some cases misrepresenting their accounts of Nassar's abuse. Now they're calling for accountability for the FBI, USA Gymnastics, and the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee. ABC News congressional correspondent Rachel Scott has the latest.
The FBI under fire after 4 of the world's top gymnasts accused the agency of turning a blind eye to the biggest sexual abuse scandal in sports history.
I don't want another young gymnast, Olympic athlete, or any individual to experience the horror that I and hundreds of others have endured. To be clear, sorry.
Take your time.
To be clear, I blame Larry Nassar, and I also blame an entire system that enabled and perpetrated his abuse.
The woman testifying before senators, painting a damning picture of a system that protected their abuser, the inaction allowing more female athletes to be molested by former Dr. Larry NASSAR.
It took over 14 months for the FBI to contact me, despite my many requests to be interviewed by them. NASSAR found more than 100 new victims to molest. It was like serving innocent children up to a pedophile on a silver platter.
Michaela Maroney said when she gave a detailed 3-hour interview to FBI agents, there was silence on the other end.
I was so shocked at the agent's silence and disregard for my trauma. After that minute of silence, he asked, "Is that all?" Those words in itself was one of the worst moments of this entire process for me. I told them how he molested me right before I won my team gold medal.
Weeks ago, the Justice Department Inspector General found FBI agents not only failed to respond with urgency, but that they lied trying to cover up their mistakes. FBI Director Christopher Wray, who was not overseeing the agency at the time, apologizing to the women.
I'm deeply and profoundly sorry to each and every one of you.
But when pressed about why the case was mishandled, no answers.
And I don't have a good explanation for you. It is utterly jarring to me. It is totally inconsistent with what we train our people on, totally inconsistent with what I see from the hundreds of agents who work these cases every day.
Diane, those 4 women are demanding that the agents responsible face criminal charges. So far, only 1 agent has been fired. It is estimated that during that 18-month period that the FBI did nothing, at least 70 more women were sexually abused. And I can tell you, Diane, there was silence in the room yesterday when each of these women said they knew victims on that list. Diane?
There sure was. Rachel Scott, thank you for that. And gold medalist Aly Raisman is speaking out this morning after her emotional testimony yesterday. Earlier on GMA, she told our Robin Roberts that she hopes their calls for action are finally being heard.
Let me just say how proud we are of you, all 4 of you. Thank you for your bravery and for speaking out as you did. Can you just take us into the hearing room and let us know the emotions that you felt?
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's hard to describe. First of all, just putting together the testimony was so difficult because it's so personal. We only had a small amount of time, and it's trying to think about what is important to say. Also recognizing this is so much bigger than just my experience. There's so many people out there that are affected by the mishandling of, the FBI, USAG, and USOC. So trying to put that together, I overthink every single word. And so I went last for the testimony, and in listening to Simone, Maggie, and Michaela, I am so proud of them and support them so much. But because I am so close to them and they are my dear friends, it was really hard to listen to them because I care about them so much. And then I was nervous, obviously, to go. And I think in the beginning of the speech, I felt really scared because it is really intimidating. And, I wanted to say the right things. I put pressure on myself. I hope that this is the day that somebody listens to us and somebody investigates into what happened, because we've been actually saying the same thing for years, but not much has happened.
So what do you hope that the nation took away from your testimony, and that of Simone, Michaela, and Maggie?
Yeah, I really hope that people realize just how bad things are. I mean, this is a really big cover-up, and the fact that the FBI, USA Gymnastics, and the United States Olympic and Paralympic Committee didn't think that this was important enough to handle it the right way is horrific. And so many people could have been spared the abuse. If you go back decades, NASSAR was first reported decades ago, and I would have never met him. I should have never met him. And after I reported, there was over 100 new victims that were abused, and I've met many of those survivors, and it's absolutely horrific. So I think it's important for people to recognize the power of one adult doing the right thing, one adult believing, validating a survivor and listening and taking proper action. And I'm really hoping that the senators, they seem to be validating. They seem to have been very supportive yesterday, and I hope they take that support and put it into action and actually do an investigation and make sure that we're looking at how the FBI, USAG, and USOPC are all related and connected, and the people that wronged us need to be held accountable so that no child gets hurt. Some of those people who enabled us might still be in positions of power. We don't know because we don't have the answers yet.
That's why an investigation is so necessary, as you all said. And I heard it when you told senators that it took over 14 months for the FBI to contact you after your initial report in 2015. So how did the mishandling of this case impact your recovery? Because you said many don't realize this type of trauma sometimes can carry on with people for the rest of their lives, Allie.
Yeah, it's really hard. It takes everything I have, and I wanted to mention yesterday that, while I may look like I have it together, I'm not crying. It takes everything I have to do that. I'm sure if people saw me behind closed doors this weekend, I definitely don't look like the same person that they saw in that room. It's really, really hard, and it's really affected me. I feel like it actually honestly affects me more than it did a few years ago, where I feel really nauseous, where I get really lightheaded, where I get really bad migraines now. I mean, to be honest, I haven't really been able to work out in years. I went from working out 7 hours some days to not really even being able to work out at all, because that's how much processing my abuse has impacted me. There was a long time where I couldn't even stand up in the shower because it took everything out of me. And every time I speak out about it, it's reliving it. And it's also I recognize that most survivors don't have the opportunity to come on Good Morning America. And I'm very grateful that I do get to come on, but I take that responsibility very seriously, is that a lot of survivors don't get the support and the validation. Like, I recognize that the four of us yesterday, it's very unusual that all the senators are saying they support us and they believe us. I recognize that's not usual. And so I take that. I'm very grateful for that. But so I think about other survivors, for the survivors that don't feel validated and believed. I'm affected by it so much, and I feel so supported by our country, and I'm so grateful for that. But I think about the other survivors, the little boy, the little girl at home that is abused in their family, and they are told that their abuse doesn't matter, or they're making it up. And I am fighting for that person because I know that this is so much bigger than me.
It sure is. Our thanks to Allie Raisman and Robin Roberts for that interview. And for more on this, let's bring in women's rights attorney Dr. Ann Oliverius of McAllister Oliverius, USA Today columnist Christine Brennan, and former FBI agent and ABC News contributor Brad Garrett. Thank you all for being here this morning.
Thank you.
Dr. Ann, I'd like to start with you. These gymnasts, they blasted the FBI and the Justice Department for what they describe as a total failure, equating it at one point, Allie Raisman said, to serving innocent children up to a pedophile on a silver platter. And yet, while the FBI admits that the way this case was handled was inexcusable, no one has faced legal consequences for that. Could this hearing change that?
I sure hope so. I'm a civil litigator in this area. And, essentially in the United States, rape is a free crime. Out of 1,000 women who have been raped, maybe 975 may get their cases to be prosecuted if they go to the police. And of them, just a couple will be found guilty, the perpetrators. It is a travesty. We have an epidemic of sexual crimes, and no one seems to really care much or do anything about it. Now I hope this will change. I hope that the FBI, that the head of the FBI, Mr. Wray, will actually do something to back up his words of sadness and sorrow and apology, and take action and show bona fide leadership that will do a lot of good for really millions of women in this country.
Christine, Michaela Maroney said during her testimony yesterday that some of the details that she revealed at that hearing she had told only to the agents working on the case. She had never even told her mother. I know you've covered this case extensively, so I'm curious, what surprised you most hearing these four women speak yesterday?
Diane, I think it was just the sheer raw emotion and what toll it takes on them. I know them. I've covered them. I was at the London Olympics, the Rio Olympics, Tokyo Olympics. I've covered all those women as a journalist and at the Olympics or at international competitions. So they're tough. They're strong. They're the best. They're the best of us. I'd want them in a foxhole for, World War III, whatever. That's how strong and amazing they are. We think big football players are the strongest. I put these gymnasts right up there in terms of what they have to do to win those gold medals. And to hear, even as Allie was just talking to Robin, to hear the toll this takes, even just talking about it now, it's been many years ago. And I don't want to sound naive. Of course, I realize that this is life-altering and it's tragic and it's horrific and it's all those things we've said all the time. But again, I cannot stress how strong these women are and how much this just takes out of them. And I think that's what hit home when it was Michaela Maroney, in the hearing room, and a question came to her after her testimony. And she said, I can't answer. Basically, she was spent just from telling the story, which, by the way, when I said just now, I don't even mean it. That is enough. And her story is just so awful, 8 times 1,000, what happened in the FBI. She did the right thing, told the FBI, and the FBI, of course, buried it and didn't. It was just awful what that FBI agent did. But the point is, I think it shows us the magnitude. If anyone doubted how serious this is, I can't imagine anyone does. But if there are people out there, I'm sure, oh, come on, whatever. Look at these women, look at the great athletes they are, and look at how this just tears them apart, as it of course should, to this day. That, I think, brings home to so many people how devastating sexual abuse and sexual assault is.
And Brad, the Inspector General testified yesterday that NASSAR went on to abuse roughly 70 more victims because of the FBI's failure to act quickly in this case. We just heard Allie Raisman telling Robin Roberts she puts that estimate over 100. So as an FBI agent who's dealt with these kinds of cases, what was your reaction to these allegations that agents initially ignored the claims and then tried to downplay them? And what do we know about these allegations that one agent was trying to get a job at the Olympics?
So it's beyond my comprehension that this ever occurred. I mean, I can think of agents that I didn't necessarily respect, but they would have at least picked up the phone, called Lansing, Michigan FBI office and told them what they just heard, and then maybe a couple of days later send them a report. Not to have put this into the system on the front end. Apparently they didn't have any violations potentially in the state of Indiana, but it doesn't matter. You are the receptacle of information from all over the world that may walk into your office, and you've got to listen to people. You can believe them, not believe them, but it's irrelevant whether you believe them or not. You pass it on and let somebody else investigate it. So that part is just unimaginable. As far as the special agent in charge, Jay Abbott, who apparently had or has this relationship with U.S. Gymnastics, where it's been reported that he was trying to get a job, that he would even talk to them before he released publicly FBI statements about this case. Totally unprofessional. It disrespects the system. It disrespects his job. And I don't know the end result for him and the agent the FBI just fired, but I know people are really would like to see them prosecuted.
And Brad, I don't know how much you are familiar with this part of the case, but can you expand at all on the allegations that these women are making that this may have been related to one of these agents wanting a job at the Olympics?
Well, I don't know. I don't know that if it's just that simple. What we don't know, Diane, is what information did the agent, the supervisor who was fired recently, the information that he received, how much of it did he pass on to Jay Abbott? What did Jay actually know on the front end? Did he know more about this later? He was about to leave the FBI. He left in 2018. I think his goal, or one of his goals, was to work for U.S. Gymnastics. And so it is a gray area as far as I'm concerned, but whoever does a deep dive on this will figure that out.
And Dr. Ann, these gymnasts didn't just criticize the FBI, but they're essentially alleging a cover-up by the FBI, USA Gymnastics, and the Olympic Committee. So could those organizations face legal consequences?
There is no doubt that they can and probably will face legal consequences, to be sure. I certainly know lawyers who are organizing suits against them right now. I'd like to say, though, that this case is an extreme case by many people's opinions. Oh, wow, the FBI, can you imagine that this has happened? Brad was so eloquent about this just a few minutes ago. But in my work as a civil litigator for rape cases and abuse of people, men and women, we see this every day of the week. Law enforcement and institutions, they protect the predators. And, we protect the women and those who are vulnerable and who have been raped and sexually assaulted. But the system does not work, the criminal justice system, and there's very little law in terms of civil rape on the books right now. We need to actually put perhaps a federal law to allow women who are above the age of 18 until, they're 100, 105. If they've been raped, if anyone, men and women have been raped, there should be civil action that can be taken. And, it takes a while. Often women are raped, particularly you see this with women, men too, less so. But with women, they're raped, and it takes often years for them to come to terms with it, to get the shock out of them enough so that they can actually take action. And sometimes it's not just safe. Sometimes for them to bring a claim of battery, of rape, of sexual assault, and particularly not through the criminal system, which is not responsive, but we need civil laws to actually help these people.
All right, Christine Brennan, Brad Garrett, and Dr. Ann Oliverius, we appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Thank you.
And coming up, SpaceX has successfully launched the first all-civilian mission to Earth's orbit. See what the crew's up to now and their amazing view when we return. Welcome back. SpaceX's Inspiration 4 mission is now flying higher than the International Space Station. The first all-civilian crew to reach orbit woke up to this remarkable view this morning. Well, that's the shuttle taking off, and here is what they're now seeing. People across the country got to watch that launch last night. Our Gio Benitez, though, got to be there in person.
Overnight, SpaceX making history, launching 4 private citizens into orbit without a professional astronaut on board.
It is headed into orbit with the crew.
Only those 4 are waking up this morning to this view from the Dragon's cupola. More of Earth than any civilian has seen before. Crowds of people gathered in the distance to watch this historic launch. You can see this incredible moment when the Crew Dragon capsule detaches from the Falcon 9 rocket. The massive booster descends back down to Earth. And as the capsule detaches from the rocket's second stage, cheers down on Earth for the mission known as Inspiration 4. As the Dragon enters space, the crew members start experiencing zero gravity. Inside the capsule, the crew releasing a toy inspired by the specially trained dogs at St. Jude Children's Hospital.
That is apropos.
This morning, they are soaring 363 miles away from Earth, orbiting the planet at 17,500 miles per hour for 3 days, going farther than any civilian has before, 100 miles past the International Space Station. 38-year-old billionaire Jared Isaacman bought all 4 seats on board and then gave 3 of them away as a fundraiser for St. Jude.
There they are, our first all-civilian crew.
One of those crew members, 29-year-old Haley Arsenault, a physician's assistant at St. Jude, once a patient there. Now she is the youngest American ever to go to space and the first pediatric cancer survivor to go too.
I'm just a regular person going to space. And, not everyone has had childhood cancer, but everyone has had to overcome something.
The trip not without risk. This is the first time the Crew Dragon has ever gone this far into space. A computer does the flying, and if there are any issues, there is no way to get to the International Space Station, but they can return to Earth. And remember, Elon Musk wants humans to get to Mars and be able to live there. So there is no question this is just the beginning of civilians going farther and farther into space, Diane.
Cool stuff. Gio Benitez at Kennedy Space Center in Florida. Thanks, Gio. And let's bring in former NASA astronaut and ABC News contributor Katie Coleman and astrophysicist Hakeem Alushaei for more on this. Thank you both for joining us today. Katie, I want to start with you. As someone who's been to space, how difficult is it to prep for people with no experience for a trip like this?
Well, apparently not as hard as we thought. They've done so much work in a short amount of time, and I would say under idealized circumstances, in that the mission was very well planned. They had the resources, and also Jared Isaacman and his group at Inspiration 4, I think, really thought about, because he has been in situations where being a team member and really understanding the rest of your team is so important. He's been there. He knew a lot about what they needed to do, and so did SpaceX, and they did those things. And I think that crew was very ready for the mission that they were preparing for.
Now, Hakeem, what went through your mind last night watching this launch, knowing all the science that goes into it?
Well, I'm incredibly impressed by the preparation. So an astronaut like Katie would normally train for about 2 years. They only had 5 months of training, and that's assisted by the fact that the Crew Dragon is an autonomous vehicle. It doesn't look anything like the previous century's space capsules, right? There's no buttons. And so, if you've ever ridden in military vehicles that are created by the government, or at least paid for by the government, there's not waste involved, right? But if you look at this, they took into account style, right? There's nothing that looks like this thing that's been there before. They have touch screens, but they also have manual controls, and even their uniforms are beautiful, right? So what we have here is a new way of accessing space, and it's something that even civilians can do with little training.
Katie, what's it like once you're up there, waking up to this kind of a view? Paint a picture for us of what they're experiencing right now, but also the difference between this and the missions that you went on as an astronaut.
Well, I might start with the last part first, where this capsule, the Dragon capsule, was originally created or designed and actually paid for as well, that design for NASA, because we needed a way to get people up and down to space. And we knew how to get people up and down there, but with using NASA. But then we turned to our commercial partners who we knew could do it more quickly, more flexibly, using all the things that NASA had learned. And so I think it really meant a lot to have NASA test pilots, astronauts, on the first couple missions here, understanding, pulling out what does it do, what does it not do, because all of us, SpaceX, NASA, Boeing, all the aerospace companies, we are all in the mission of getting people to space. And to think about them, up in space right now, I mean, this crew was very, very ready. I say for the mission that they were preparing for, which doesn't involve spacewalking or docking. And at the same time, the magic is the same. The fact that you are a human, and that they have 4 different, a human up in space, floating and flying and looking at our Earth. I mean, I am envious, but at the same time, I am so happy for them. And I also just think that they bring, they bring a part of each of us up with them, and they've found a way to tell their story the government isn't all that good at.
And Hakeem, we've seen a rover land on Mars. We've seen Jeff Bezos and Richard Branson go to space. Now 4 civilians orbiting the Earth for 3 days. What broader impact does all of this have on the country and on the world?
Yeah, so just illustrating these things, once you do it the first time, then that opens the door, right? So certain things seemed impossible until they were done, like running a mile in 4 minutes. Now everyone runs a mile in 4 minutes who's a professional runner, right? Who does that type of running. Well, what we're illustrating here, what these private enterprises are illustrating, is that making access to space almost routine, like we have now traveling from country to country in airplanes, is something that may actually be possible. We may actually be doing civilian suborbital flights and civilian orbital flights, and who knows, perhaps going to the moon and Mars, because that is our aspiration. Our science fiction shows tell us what humans want to do, right? We want to be Star Trek. We want to fly through the galaxy. Now, that is way out there. There's a lot of problems associated with that, but access to our solar system, access to low Earth orbit, that is now attainable.
All right. And Katie, where does this go from here? What's next for the future of space exploration?
Well, I'd like to say the sky is the limit, but it is not. I'm glad that Hakeem brought up science fiction in that when people get to see themselves in these great things that are being done, that is the most important thing really for our future here on Earth, solving our challenges. And so to have people that look like a whole bunch of us on this flight is so important, I think, to the whole planet. It's important to me. It's important to Hakeem. You know, statistics like Cyan Proctor is the 4th Black woman to be an astronaut. I mean, I'm just glad that she will not be the last, as a friend of mine, Victor Glover, likes to say. So this mission really brings all of us into the future.
All right, Katie Coleman, Hakeem Al-Shahid, thank you both. Always great to talk to you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And that does it for this newscast. I'm Diane Macedo. Thanks for joining us. And remember, ABC News Live is here for you all day with the latest news, context, and analysis. I'll see you back here at 3 p.m. Eastern. Until then, stay safe and have a great day, everybody.
Hi everyone, George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.